Hello, everybody. It's Bryan Kemper. Welcome to Prolife is the New Punk Rock. I am excited today to have my guest. A lot of people always try to say that pro-lifers, it's just a religious issue. It's some of the things we hear told to us all the time is keep your rosaries off my ovaries and stuff like that. And I do believe that God has called us, to be pro-life, to be actively pro-life, but to understand the sanctity of human life is not necessarily something you have to be a Christian to understand. To understand that it's wrong to kill humans is not necessarily just a Christian issue. And I think that one of the most exciting things in the pro-life movement right now is to see the teamwork that's coming together, not only between different Christian denominations, but people that don't fit into a Christian denomination, that don't have a faith belief, that maybe are different places in their life, but they understand that every single time an abortion takes place, an innocent human person is being destroyed. And one of the groups that's really taking off right now is the Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising. And their communications director, who is also the executive director of Pro-Life San Francisco, Kristin Tuner, is here with me today. And I am excited. Kristin, how's it going out there in San Francisco? I don't know if you know, that's where I was born. Hello?
I said that's
Okay.
awesome. It's going great out here. Yeah.
Okay, very good. I think your mic was muted there for a second. That's fine. Um, so, Kristin, I I know that I first really met you and got to talk to you in DC back at the last event at the Supreme Court, um, and I sat with you and with Teresa and so many of the other members of POW, and for me, it was super encouraging. It was extremely encouraging. Um, when I first got involved in the pro-life movement, it was literally right after I became a Christian, and it wasn't necessarily just my Christian views that led me to that. In fact, it was a punk rock band. It was a punk rock concert I went to, and this band sang a song called "The Silent Scream." And they told me about this song, and actually I had the drummer of the band on as my first guest when I started this show. We're still friends 30 something years later, but that really got me thinking about what abortion is and what it means to kill another human person. And when I first got involved in the pro-life movement, I was the only person that looked like me in the pro-life movement. There wasn't anybody with tattoos and piercings and hair, and my mohawk was much higher. And when I first started pitching ideas to different pro-life groups of things to do to reach a different crowd, people thought I was absolutely crazy. People were like, "Oh my gosh, you can't have a punk rock concert for pro-life." When I first started Rock for Life, and
hmm
I got invited to go. Perry Farrell from the band Jane's Addiction and Porno for Pyros. He invited me to go on tour with Lollapalooza back in 1994
Wow.
because he had so many pro-choice groups on the tour, and he said he wanted a balance, so he invited us to do a booth. And again, I went to some different pro-life leaders, and they're, "Oh, you can't go on a secular rock concert tour," and "Oh no, you can't do that." And my justification back then to them, using the Christian logic, was, well, we have to be a light in the darkness. But even beyond that, is this is a place where so many young people are going to end up very soon with that decision to whether or not to keep a pregnancy. And I think it's probably one of the most important places for that pro-life message to be. So I want to know from you, what led you in your journey to be a crazy anti-abortion activist, which is something I say with love, not in a
Yeah.
negative way.
Well, I definitely am crazy for human life. I would say that my journey here was a long one. I was originally very in favor of abortion, especially in high school. I talked a lot about abortion and I had a lot of arguments with my classmates about it. It was something that I constantly brought up, which I find a little bit weird because I actually wasn't super involved in a lot of other political issues. It was one of the only issues that I talked about. And normally, one of the most controversial issues isn't going to be the one single one that you talk about the most. But here I am. So when I was in high school, I would talk about it all the time. And it wasn't one of those things that really was real for me because I had never, experienced pregnancy. I had never been in a situation where I thought I was pregnant. I had never had to really face that head on and put myself in the shoes of people who were making those decisions. So it wasn't until a little bit later in my high school experience when, I started to develop a sexually abusive relationship with one of my teachers that I had to really reconsider my position because, um, it was this really hard time. I struggled in this abusive relationship for probably 6 months. And then after, he was found to be doing this, he was obviously sent to jail. And I just had a lot to think about. I was completely alone. I thought that my friends would be there for me and help me in this really hard time because as a young girl, I didn't understand these types of relationships. I'd never had any serious relationship in my life. And then to be thrown into, a sexually abusive relationship with a 35-year-old man, it was very, very traumatizing. And then on top of it, I didn't have support from my community. And this just caused me to be very, very stressed out. And I was so stressed that I actually began to miss my period. And I thought, could I possibly be pregnant? And that really freaked me out. And
Mhm.
it's when I started to have to reconsider what my thoughts were about abortion because I thought, if I'm going to be pregnant at 16 with, a baby that was conceived in rape, like what would I even do? What would the choice be? And I seriously considered, what I would do or if I would get an abortion if I found out I was pregnant. And I didn't even know how to tell my family that I thought I was pregnant. It really freaked me out. And so my sisters ended up getting me a couple of pregnancy tests, and I found out I wasn't pregnant. But that huge scare was like life changing. I researched abortion was, I heard former abortionists talking about it, and I realized that this whole time I had been advocating for violence against other human beings. And that broke my heart that that was the first place I went when I was violated and my rights were violated because it's something that people push as a solution when in reality it's just another act of violence onto another human being. And
Absolutely.
it has never undone what happened to me. It still is something that I think about every single day. I have horrible flashbacks and nightmares about it, and it's something that's never going to go away, especially if there were to be an abortion on top of that. And I know that everyone's experiences are different, but I don't think that an act of violence will ever cure or undo an act of violence.
Absolutely. And I think that you and I both understand something that so many people don't, and that is um, what goes on internally when that kind of abuse takes place. When I was 11, my uncle took advantage of me, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I was an 11-year-old boy. I was scared to death, and you can't tell the other boys. You can't tell the other guys because then at that age they're just going to call you derogatory names. And when I finally told my mother, I was told to never bring it up again and that it didn't happen and stuff. And I think that so many times that fear that we have is because people don't understand how violated we feel, how much we feel like something was stolen from us. A piece of us was literally ripped away and we can never have it back.
Mhm.
And I know how painful that was. And it to this day, I try to do everything I can in my power to avoid being around this human, but
Mhm.
I have had to in at a funeral situation, and it's such a hard position to be in. But again, I look at that and I think about that tiny human inside the womb, because the one of the biggest arguments that you hear is my body, my choice, my body, my choice, my body, my choice. It's like, when you're in school and they teach you how to spell, you just repeat and you repeat and you
Mhm.
repeat, and that's repeated to us. But to understand the concept of, yes, in many things in life, in many aspects of life, it is my body, my choice. And I do believe that every human being has a right to do what they want with their body until we decide to use that right and our body to harm another human being.
Yeah.
Because at that point, we are taking away something that doesn't belong to us. And we don't have a choice to use our body to harm someone else. I mean, the choice, people make that choice, but it doesn't make it right in any way whatsoever.
And I found actually that, like, one of the things that helped me humanize the unborn person was how much I felt like I related to them. Just because, the unborn historically have just been erased and dehumanized, and in every single sense of the word, just made completely invisible to our society. And it was in that moment that I felt like I was being rejected by every authority figure in my life, every person who was meant to take care of me, every friend that I had, and I had felt completely erased and dehumanized. And I wanted to make a voice for people who felt that way too. And I know that, the unborn don't necessarily understand, just as a newborn child doesn't understand their rights being violated. But I think that it's my place in the society to create a space where these people can feel like they were respected and loved and seen, even at their weakest, most vulnerable state.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's something that, that we have to, I think that the key to this is to make people understand the humanity of the unborn.
Mhm.
That person, that unique individual human person, from the very moment of fertilization with 23X 23Y chromosome come together and begins to grow and develop. You have zygote or embryo, fetus, infant, toddler, teenager, adult. All of those words simply describe the stage of the life of an individual human person. What was it that really popped when you really go, oh my gosh, this is killing a human being, a person? What was it that really hit you on that?
I think a lot of it was, Dr. Anthony Levatino, the former abortionist, just watching his videos. It's like, when I watch them now, it's really upsetting because, I don't feel the same amount of disgust that I did at the time, because I have seen it so many times, and I, had to kind of distance myself from my own mental health. But when you first see that video of what an abortion is, and him describing it, and him talking about how he performed abortions, and you see the medically accurate animation, it just hits you in the stomach. It makes you nauseous. You see that everything that you have said up to this point is depriving that human being of every single right that they could possibly have. And it was kind of that really sparked this in me, because it just disgusted me so heavily. And I started to listen to the testimonies of former abortion workers, and those were really, really influential in me changing my mind. And yeah, it was mostly just seeing what it was, especially from the mouth of somebody who's performed abortions themselves.
I know that there are groups and organizations out there who really have a hard time with the images of aborted human beings. I really don't like to use the word graphic photos, because
Mhm.
those are images of human beings, and those pictures, when we look at them, it's easy to just forget sometimes that that was an actual human being growing in someone. But I believe that when we show that truth, like you said, when you saw that video, I've been outside in front of abortion mills countless times where I remember specifically one. I was in Portland, Oregon, and I was holding a 6-foot poster of what an abortion looks like. And a young girl with her mother, she was probably about 19, was walking in to have an abortion. And when she walked by me, she looked, and she just got so angry, and she walked up, and she punched through my sign and into my sternum. But
Dang.
then she said, "Thanks a lot. Now I can't do this," and walked away. And I thought to myself, I'll take 500 punches. Literally. I really don't care. I will take 500 punches to the face if that's what it takes for one human being to live. Because that's really what we're saying here. This is not just an issue. This is not just a cause for us. We are literally telling people, listen, that building over there, innocent humans are walking into that building but will be coming out in medical waste containers. That's how real this is to us.
Mm-hmm.
When was the first time you went to an abortion mill as a pro-lifer?
As a pro-lifer. So this is actually interesting because I had a friend in high school and she would pass by there, on her way just to, go to school and live her everyday life. And she would always make fun of this guy out there, which, he's kind of wild, but it's funny looking back because she was like, there's this crazy guy out there and he's holding this huge aborted baby sign and was like making fun of him. And it wasn't until I actually started going out there and I met him that I was like, oh, this is the guy that my friend was talking about in high school. And, we didn't get along too well, me and the guy, but it was just interesting to see the perception of what people thought, pro-lifers were versus what they are. And I started going out to the abortion facility probably, I would say a couple months after I became pro-life. So this was like the beginning of 2020. And I did that for a long time. I was out there for like a year and a half.
And what city were you in?
I was in Redding, California. So it was at the Women's Health Specialist, which we call the Women's Death Specialist. And we would go out there every day, me and my sister and a bunch of people from our community. We set up a table and we had people of all different experiences. We had people who, had teen pregnancies. We had people who've had abortions before. We had people who had, all different faiths and beliefs on the political spectrum. And it was really interesting to see the unity within our team because every time there was somebody there, we could be like, yes, we know exactly what you're going through. We know what it's like to, have an abortion. We know what it's like to be a victim of sexual abuse. We know what it's like to, all of these different situations. And our team really just did a stellar job and I love them. I no longer live in Redding, obviously, but they're still, doing the work. They are still in Redding, or some of them have even moved around the country to do more pro-life stuff. So that's been really, great. And it was really nice to see because when I first started going, it was mostly older folks from the community that had been going there for 30 years. And they had all these stories about how, the old Women's Health Specialist shut down and we got to go inside the old facility and see how like gross and mismanaged the building was. And, we've been arrested and we've done this and we've done that. And it was really encouraging to see like all of those older folks finally getting to see somebody in their community who's young, care, and know that there's going to be someone there when they're gone. And there's going to be somebody there to carry on the legacy of, providing these options to people and telling them that they don't have to choose between their future and their child.
It's funny. I know it's not really the pro-life topic at Redding. I have such mixed memories of Redding. Because when I was a little kid, like we're talking, all the way up until like 13, 14 years old, I would spend every summer several weeks in Redding to visit my grandma.
It was hot there.
But when I was a kid, it was all about the fishing and dirt bike riding in the hills and swimming and all this fun stuff that we did as kids. In trade for when I got home, I had to sit in a tub for days because I was so covered in poison oak that I would get every single trip to Redding. So Redding to me is just poison oak capital of the world.
It literally, I used to get so much poison oak as a kid. It's so hilarious. I remember because I have two older sisters and we used to live in like a very rural outskirt of Redding where we like lived on a hill and we had like a very small farm and there was poison oak surrounding the entire property. So we would get poison oak pretty bad. But once I got older, you know how to avoid it on the trails. You learn and you don't get it anymore.
Well, I'd get it because I'd go pick wild blackberries. Oh my gosh, the wild blackberries there.
They're so good. My mom used to have us go pick some and she'd make a cobbler out of it. And they were just...
That's what my grandma did.
That's awesome.
So I remember we were sitting at the Dubliner just recently in DC. And I was sitting with you and so many of the other people from POW. And it brought this huge emotion to me of, wow, look at what we have because I'm getting old, man. I'm getting old. Yeah. I spend my free time golfing now. Okay. If I'm not out doing pro-life work and stuff, I golf. I'm an old man now. I'm probably the youngest looking old person though, that most people know. And I still blast punk rock out of my Mustang driving down the road and stuff. But I see these young people like you getting involved, and I see you out there on the bullhorn, and I see you out there holding signs and organizing, and you guys having meetings and making signs in someone's apartment. I'm just like, gosh, that was so long ago, but it's so cool to see.
Yeah.
And I will give you one bit of advice. I'm going to give you one bit of advice. When you
Okay.
use the bullhorn, you don't have to. I notice you because you're loud. You want to let that message out.
Yeah.
Let it's similar to golf. When I'm golfing, if I try to swing the club too hard and use my power instead of the club's power, the ball goes backwards or somewhere else. With the bullhorn, you got to let the bullhorn be the power. But uh,
Cool.
but seeing you guys out there was so exciting, and I know that we're both looking forward to December 1st
Mhm.
when the
It's
dot.
gonna get crazy out there. Like,
It is,
even we went on November 1st just to, there was a hearing about the heartbeat bill for Texas.
yes.
It was wild. I think the pro-lifers won, if I'm being honest. We outnumbered them a lot for a lot of the events. We were louder, we were cooler, we were hotter, we were, we had better, ideology, obviously, but,
See, we always say we win because we have God on our side, but you
mhm.
know, I'll tell you, I, I've been to some events where it gets absolutely insane, but I really believe that this will probably be one of the most politically, electrically charged days in front of the Supreme Court in a
Yeah, I
long
can
time.
imagine they're gonna have a lot of, like, police and security there.
And the last time you and I were there, the police were amazing. To be honest, they were absolutely amazing. Every time someone tried to interrupt the pro life rally when the pro abortion march was going on, the police actually created a barrier, which I've never seen them do in DC. I have never seen them keep us apart at the Supreme Court, which they did the last time that we were there. Not the November 1st one, the one before with when they
The
had
Women's March?
the women's march. Yes.
Oh, yeah, I was actually surprised because I think the progressive pro-lifers are always like, "We've done our job if they confuse us for the pro-choicers." Um, but, like, obviously we looked cool and we were at the Women's March and we were trying to walk back towards SCOTUS and the police were like, "No, you can't go this way. Like, this is for the pro-lifers." And we're like, We're anti-abortion. Let us in." And they're like, "No, you have to go this way." So they forced us onto the marching route in the opposite direction of the marchers. And so we're like, okay. So we just started chanting like, "Abortion is violent." And the police are like, "You can't be in there." And everyone started swarming us because they were so angry that we were doing that. And I was like, "You guys would let us out." And then they finally let us out. But it was wild that, we got
We in California, in Southern California, there was a group that we nicknamed them the Isuzu Group, and these were guys that were hired to go harass pro-lifers in front of abortion mills because they knew that most of the pro-lifers in front of the abortion mills were young Christian families,
Mhm.
predominantly Catholic. And so these guys would come up, and Eric Whittington and Tina Whittington of Students for Life and Rock for Life. Eric Whittington and I actually in DC once went undercover because we looked like pro-abortion people, and
Yeah.
they trained us. They taught us go up to the Catholic moms with their kids and start swearing and talking about sex and take out a banana and a condom and show the kids how to use a condom, and this will scare them off. This was tactics used to scare them off. It's not going to work with POW. None of that stuff is
We
going to
will grab the banana and we will snap it in half. Literally come at us.
Yeah, and it's like they can't intimidate us, and I think that's why when I used to go out there, they would get so furious because, and back then I weighed like 300 and something pounds. I was huge, and they were like, "This guy can't be pro life. We need him on our side." I got beat up several times, and I wouldn't fight back. I always, the only time I ever struck back at an event was when I saw a pro-abortion activist sexually abuse a woman, touch her in a place
Wow.
she shouldn't touch her, and I knocked him out, and I have zero regret for that.
Good.
But I don't fight back in those situations. But
Mhm.
the point is, they're the ones who use the violence. They're the ones who use the intimidation. They're the
Which
ones who
is ironic, and because their whole thing is about respecting people's bodies. But even just last week in New York, I was, grabbed multiple times. They tried to yank my sign out of my hand. They hit our cameras. They screamed at us. It's like, you don't respect our bodies. You just, don't care that this corporation is killing people for money.
Or the famous video, I think it might have taken place in Canada or somewhere, where the guy roundhouse kicked a pro-lifer in the
I
face. It was
saw that, and
on
he's like, "I
camera.
mentioned it your phone," and it's like, that's still not okay, like.
No, it's not okay. But yeah, the stuff that they try to say is the stuff that they're doing, to
Mhm.
be honest, in most cases. And then I'll tell you, my heart breaks, honestly. I believe at the Women's March, you probably saw just the same thing that I saw. And it was a girl, probably your age. She looked similar age to you, who was carrying a sign, and I apologize for the language here, that said, "I'm a slut for reproductive freedom." And I think to myself, how does somebody go from being a little girl to holding a sign calling themselves a slut? Like,
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with reclaiming the way that women are viewed in society. And I know that, Pow obviously wants to use really provocative language and stuff like that. I don't think that we would have a major issue with making a pro life version of a sign like that, just because, women are called sluts for pretty much any reason. The word really doesn't mean a lot anymore because you can literally just exist and be called a slut. So if you want to, reclaim the word slut and make it, like, you just really like something or you're super passionate about something, like, I'm a slut for saving preborn lives or something, like, I understand. But I definitely see how a more literal interpretation of that could be really disturbing, especially when that comes at the expense of another human's life.
and she was, I think, standing right next to somebody with a sign that just said "F them babies."
Yeah, but I thought they were clumps of cells, so I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's just supposed to be a clump of cell. So we'll actually, our half hour is almost up. Time flies.
Time flies when we're cool.
I am going to see you in a couple weeks in DC at the Supreme Court, and I know that we're looking forward to this, because this literally could be the case that dismantles Roe versus Wade.
Mhm.
This
You
could
could
be
say it would dismember Roe v. Wade.
dismember Roe v. Wade. Absolutely. And I look back at because everybody goes, well, the Supreme Court said it. It's law. That's it. That's it. Well, there was a time when the Supreme Court upheld the 3/5 compromise in Dred Scott and said that blacks were truly only 3/5 of a human being, and therefore could be sold, bought, and traded.
And the
Back
basis
in
of Roe v. Wade
1857.
is just completely not even what pro-abortion people are fighting for. They
No,
even said that in the original Roe v. Wade decision that there isn't an absolute right to bodily autonomy, and if they could prove that it was a human being, that bodily autonomy wouldn't justify ending their lives. And at the same time, ultrasound technology had hardly reached the United States yet, and it wasn't high quality enough for us to really understand the science behind preborn life.
absolutely. Even the ACLU recently, not to get into another subject, but when talking
Mhm.
about vaccines, said, well, bodily autonomy is not monumental, and you don't have a right to your bodily autonomy if someone else is going to get hurt. The
Yeah,
ACLU said that, and I'm just like, I'm reading it and going, they finally get it, but they don't.
yeah.
But we're going to be out there, and I just want to thank you for taking a stance. Thank you for being willing to dedicate your life. I've been doing this full time for over 30 years, and I will do this until my dying breath. But it's amazing to see young people out there that are progressive, that are anti-abortion, that are into different lifestyles and stuff, but all standing up for that simple truth that we as human beings do not have a right to harm another human being. And that's what this really boils down to. So, Kristin, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the progressive movement, being involved in the pro-life movement. And I can't wait to stand and do some activism with you, and then go to the Dubliner afterwards and have a good meal and talk about it. But thanks for doing the show, and I'm sure I'll have you back on here again. I know you probably have a million more things you'd love to say, but we are definitely out of time. Kristin, I know that you are not from a faith background, but I do close my show in prayer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, if that's all right.
Cool.
Father God, I just thank you for this day, and I thank you for the opportunity to stand with people of all different backgrounds to stand up for life. And I ask right now, Father God, that your hand be in what we're doing at the Supreme Court on December 1st, and to protect us there, and to inspire more people to take a stand for life. I am Bryan Kemper. This has been Pro-Life is the New Punk Rock, and my guest today was Kristin Tuner of Pro-Life San Francisco and Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising. You'll be seeing a lot more of them on this show and many other places. And anybody who can, if you can make it out December 1st to the Supreme Court, we would love to have you join us in our stance to see Roe versus Wade, as Kristin said, dismembered and abortion brought to an end in our society. Thank you so much.